Everyone, and welcome to another Into the Terminal. Today I'm flying solo, and we're going to be talking about DNF, which is a package manager we use for managing software on RPM-based or Red Hat type distributions. So let's jump right into the terminal, shall we? All right. So we're looking at a Red Hat Enterprise Linux 9 system here, and one of the things that I think is something we don't often deal with, but is a really common challenge for newer users is how do I find software, right? So um, one of the things you can do is you can use DNF Search. So maybe I'm interested in Apache web server software. So DNF Search actually will look through the package name and then this brief description that's put into the metadata of every package. And we'll look for the search term that you provided. And you can see that it's highlighted here in purple for all the matches. And as I look through this list, it's pretty big. So if I was brand spanking new to Linux, it might be a little bit overwhelming. But we can look through and find out things like uh, APR. Like that doesn't sound like an Apache web server, but this one does sound like an Apache web server. And then there's some related RPMs as well. Maven, which is a Java tool. Um, the different modules that you can get plugged into it. So like Apache is a whole bunch of software. Actually, the Apache Foundation makes lots of different pieces of software, and a lot of it is shipped with Red Hat Enterprise Linux and other Linux distros. Um, so you may have to get a larger list if you're using a pretty broad search term like Apache. So let's say that you look through the list and you're able to find the package you want. This one right here. So what we're told is the name of the package, HTTPD, and the architecture on which it was built. So this is an x86 64 based package. And if you want to install this on your machine, you just DNF install HTTPD. So DNF will handle checking all the dependencies for that software package, and then it will pull in whatever additional packages it needs in order to satisfy the package request that you made of it. So I said install Apache or install HTTPD. It turns out it's already there, right? In fact, it says right here, hey, the package is already installed. But there's a newer version available. So maybe what you really want me to do is upgrade it. And so to upgrade it to a newer version of Apache, I'd also have to upgrade these additional packages too. So if that's fine, you say okay at this, is this okay question, and then it will download the packages and then install them on your system. Um, and there you go. Apache is now there, or upgrade Apache is now there. All right. So the other thing we could do is like specifically if we want to upgrade, right? DNF is actually pretty nice in that it saw that I already had a package, but it was an older version. So it graciously offered to do the upgrade for me. Um, but typically, and with other package managers, you have to tell it that you want something to be upgraded versus installed. Installed is like getting fresh new software on your machine that it doesn't have. And upgrading is taking existing software and getting a newer version of it. And so, for example, I could just do a DNF upgrade, and it's going to check my software installation with all the available updates. And there are about 255 packages that need to be updated on this machine. So if I hit yes to answer this question, is it okay? It'll go ahead and start downloading those 250 packages and working its way through upgrading them. But that's a lot of packages, and I don't want to bore you during the critical path. So I'm going to say no, which is the default. I did look through this list earlier, and I noticed that one of the packages that has available updates is the VI Improved editor. So I could, instead of saying DNF update everything, I could specify what package I want updated. So I could say DNF update Vim. And that constrains the upgrade behavior to just this package set that I referenced, right? So instead of 250 packages that get upgraded, just the Vim ones are going to get upgraded. And if I'm okay with that, I hit yes. And it downloads and applies the updates to my system. All right, the last one I wanted to cover is deleting software, at least cover in the critical path. Deleting software. So just a minute ago, I installed an upgraded Apache, but what if I wanted to remove that from my system? I could do a DNF remove HTTPD, and it'll remove HTTPD, which was the request. And then it says, by the way, these are additional dependencies that nobody else is using. So I'll remove these packages too to help keep the system tidy. So if I'm happy with that, I can go ahead and say yes. And then it goes through and deletes these different packages. All right. So that's a quick how to operate DNF. As we move into the transition and talk into the deeper dive, we're going to look at some more options on listing software that's with your machine or finding additional types of software that's on a machine. We're going to work with the DNF history command so you can actually do transaction based stuff, which is kind of neat. I'll talk about some common options that I end up using a lot. And then we'll end it out with adding additional repositories to your machine so you can get even more software. So stay with us as we transition to the deeper dive. Don't forget to mash that like and subscribe button. See you over there. All right. So in our critical path, we kind of hit like all the high points of how we normally see DNF used. Um, And so now we get to talk a little bit more deeply about other things we might be interested in learning about this package manager, as well as other capabilities it might have. So let me go ahead and pull my screen share back up, and I'll clear my screen real quick. Here we go. All right. So I said that people who are new to Linux or new to Red Hat distros may not know the software they want. So I showed you Yum Search, which is a way to do a keyword search. There's also a couple other ways of providing information. One is Yum, or sorry, I keep saying Yum, DNF list available. So DNF list available will look at all of the configured software repositories on this machine and look at all the software in those repositories that has not yet been installed on this machine. So this is all the available software that I could have if I wanted to, but is not currently installed. So maybe I'm interested in this Zenity thing. Or actually, you know what? Let me see what it is first. How about I do a DNF info on Zenity? All right, so Zenity, reading the description here, lets you display GTK plus dialog boxes for command line through shell scripts. All right, so this is a graphical library used to provide um, graphical interface for calling from shell scripts. So if I want to install this, DNF install Zenity. All right, so 136 packages. So Zenity, being a graphical application, needs a graphical desktop environment because that's what it's expecting to interact with. And so this huge pile of applications here is actually installing most of the graphical interface onto this machine, which I don't have a graphical interface to this machine, so I can install it, but not really anything is going to be useful to me because everything I'm doing is through SSH and a terminal connection. But if I did have a graphical interface, then I could now, thanks to installing Zenity, I could make graphical based shell scripts to work on the desktop environment. All right. So maybe you're interested in knowing what your installed software is, right? So we talked about finding something with search or maybe with list available, and I usually pipe that into a grep to be more, a little bit filter it down. Um, but maybe you want to see what is already on your box. So let me finish this transaction. We can do another yum list. I keep saying yum list, DNF list installed. So DNF list installed is the name of the package, the version of the package that is installed on the machine, and this last thing is from where it came. So what installation or what repository was used to install this software? And what we can see there is generally two. There's the RHEL 9 x86-64 base OS and the RHEL 9 x86-64 AppStream. This machine is a cloud instance, and so there's also a couple of packages provided by the Red Hat Update Infrastructure for my cloud provider. That's what that at RHEL 9 is. And then down the bottom, you see this at Anaconda. That means it came from the installer. So when I installed the machine, this one was put down into the system. All right, so you can look at all of the packages you have installed and their versions and where they came from. All right, let's see. Um, Another way to find software is by maybe you know the name of the command that you use for generating it or for using it. So if I do a DNF what provides and a specific command name, so in this case, the user sbin HTTPD file, it'll go through and figure out. Let's try that again. Oh, helps if I spell provides correctly. It'll go through and figure out what package I need to install in order to get that file that I referenced. And so in order to get that file, I'd have to install one of these HTTPD core versions that are out there. But maybe you don't know the directory structure in which the command lives. So I could also just use a wildcard. But you'll notice when we do this that you get a lot more matches because there are a lot more software packages that provide something that ends in HTTPD, right? There's some Python ones because they have a site package for plugin for Apache web server. Here's one for Perl because there's a Perl module that plugs in for Apache. Oh, here's one. Etsy HTTPD, right? Configuration files for Apache. So you can use wildcards in your what provides, but it'll give you a lot more than maybe you were expecting. So the more precise you can be in that file name, the better. But you don't always necessarily know where those commands are going to live. But there's two directories on Red Hat Enterprise Linux and variants that are pretty common in user bin and the name of the command you're looking for, or user sbin and the name of the command you're looking for. So generally what I'll do is I'll put in the full path like user bin HTTPD. And when it comes back and says that there is no such file that is provided by any package, I go, oh, well, let's see if it's the other one, user sbin HTTPD. And that one will come back with matches and we'll figure out what package we need to install in order to get this command. All right. I wanted to talk about yum history as well. So when we're doing our, man, I keep saying yum. When we're doing our DNF command to manage the packages on our machine, If we do a DNF history, these are all of the package transactions that DNF has done, and they're kept track of in a database. And so, for example, if I wanted to undo that like giant pile of packages I installed with Zenity, I could try this. I could try DNF remove Zenity, but you'll remember that I installed something like 140 packages, and it's trying to remove 137. Um, so there's a slight differential there because some were installed as dependencies, and um, there are different types of dependencies that may be required. So it's a cleaner way if you maybe installed something and then you've changed your mind and you want to get rid of it, and it's relatively close to when that happened on your system, is DNF history. So Zenity here is transaction 17, and it's the most recent package transaction we had on the machine. And so I could do a DNF history undo 17. And so this is going to look into transaction number 17 in the database and figure out all the packages that were involved in that transaction and whether they were installed, upgraded, removed, whatever. And then it will undo that transaction to put the state back to previous before I introduce Zenity and all of its friends onto the system. All right, so this is a cleaner way to remove a giant pile or a group of packages that you maybe installed, or to undo a mistaken install, or upgrade or removal. So that way you don't have to remember what packages came with the transaction history. You can just say, I want to undo this transaction, and it will figure out the stuff that it did as part of the transaction, what packages were touched, what versions they were, and then we'll revert them back to its state beforehand. Now, I said if it's relatively recent. Um, so as we look at this history, right, we can see here that the um, system was updated. Actually, right there, it was updated. So we applied all the package updates to it to bring it to most current. But then we installed Apache, which actually upgraded it. And then we upgraded Vim. So if we were to roll back to here, and I said DNF undo transaction 11, what happens to Apache and Vim and a couple of other things start to get weird because that was layered on after, well after transaction 11. So history is great, but you want to use it if it's the top of the history, not if it's kind of buried down in your transaction history. That makes things a little bit more challenging. And there you probably want to stick to something like a remove or an individual update. All right. A couple of options that I use a lot with DNF. All right, so one that we use on the show a ton is the -y option. So as we've been using DNF, it's been stopping after showing me what the transaction is going to look like and asking for approval before it continues with that transaction. So if we do a DNF install Zenity again, so it calculates all the dependencies and shows me what the transaction it's planning on doing is going to be, and then asks, is this okay? Yes or no, with the default being no. So oops, if you DNF install -y Zenity, basically you're saying answer yes to all the questions. So uh, it won't stop and say, is it okay? It'll just automatically answer yes and push forward into the installation. Now, we use that here on the show a lot because we would just want to like install something or upgrade something and kind of gloss over it while we're talking to you guys about something else. But in a real production environment, I probably would not use -y very often because I want to actually have that point where everything stops and I can just take a quick look to make sure that the transaction looks about what I expect and that there's not like a ton more packages that were pulled in by accident or that I wasn't expecting, or that there aren't like weird upgrades that are being pulled in as part of this transaction package history or package transaction plan before approving it to go forward. All right. So we use it a lot here on the show, but in real life, um, I found that when I use it and I'm not paying close attention, I end up having to use DNF history to undo things that I didn't mean to do by accident because I didn't take a quick look at the transaction schedule or transaction summary before advancing it. All right. One of the other options that I use a lot is download only. All right. So download only, the reason I use it a lot is that if I'm going to be applying updates to a system, you have to, or oftentimes you have to apply those updates during a maintenance time period on that system. So, you schedule your maintenance window and then you have a very finite time of executing that maintenance. So, one way you can save yourself a little bit of that time window is by pre-positioning your updates on the machine, right? And that's what I did with this download only. So now if I do a DNF upgrade, all the packages that I had staged are already downloaded on the machine, right? In fact, they're in var cache DNF in one of these subdirectories here. So it downloads them into this cache that aligns with its repository name. All right, so there we go. And if I look under packages, so when I said DNF download only and told it to upgrade the machine, all it did was look at all the packages that need to be upgraded, and then it downloaded them onto the machine, but didn't actually apply them. And so as I'm starting my preparations for my maintenance window, right? It's not yet open. I can't actually do the maintenance yet. But I will go ahead and pre-stage these downloads because depending on your machine, it can take a fair amount of time for them to download to the system so that you can then install them. So you could save yourself a little bit of time during your maintenance window by having those RPM packages pre-staged on the system by doing a DNF download only for your upgrades. All right, I see Rick mentions that he likes DNF history info and an ID number. It's one I've actually never looked at. Let me take a look here, Rick. All right, so if we look at DNF history, and this one, let's look at 12. So DNF history info on 12. All right, so that shows you a lot more detail on the history of this specific transaction ID. Right. Again, we went into DNF history and then Rick suggested the info and then your number of transaction. And it goes through and actually gives you really good detail on what was done during this transaction. That'll also be kind of nice if you were to do something like undo. What would you really be undoing? Right. So you can take a quick look before you get rid of them or revert it back to what it was before. Good tip, Rick. All right. Um, the last subject that I wanted to cover is adding additional repos. So Red Hat Enterprise Linux ships with something like uh, I don't know, between 7 and 9,000 individual RPM packages. But people all the time tell me that Red Hat or RHEL comes with no software, and I think that it's not that it comes with no software because we ship with thousands and thousands and thousands of packages, but it may be that we're not shipping all the packages that they may be used to being able to get access because they come from another distro, right? So other Linux distros will have a set of packages that they support, and then a bunch of additional packages that are extra that are really nice to have or might be useful for certain things, but are not core packages maintained by the company that manages the distribution. And so I'm thinking specifically about Ubuntu. Ubuntu by default enables this repository called Universe out of the box. So when you install, you get all the canonical packaged Ubuntu packages. And then you have the Ubuntu Universe, which is all the community supported packages as well. But RHEL, we want to be very explicit about what we do or don't support. And so the packages that you see on a native Red Hat Enterprise Linux system are just the ones that are shipped by Red Hat and are available from Red Hat software engineers. So when someone says to me, like, it doesn't have some software, some module for PHP or Python or something, um, that is probably true. We ship with lots of modules, but we certainly don't ship with every single one under the sun. But if that same person was to try and access that module on, let's say, Ubuntu, where they have this huge pile of community packages that are enabled by default, they're installing something that's natively not supported by their vendor. However, they probably don't know or care, right? They just want the thing that they want. So for you to get a similar package experience on RHEL, we also have a community distribution of packages that's a great supplement for what already comes with RHEL. And it's called the Extra Packages for Enterprise Linux, or EPEL repository. So to install it, actually, let me just do a DNF repo list so I can show you what I've got. So these are the repositories currently enabled on this machine. And to install extra packages for Enterprise Linux, a lot of third-party package repositories will put all of their repository definitions that are needed to use their software into an RPM. And so that's what we're seeing here in this command, right? I'm going to do a DNF install, and then it's not a locally stored RPM. Instead, it's going to go out and download this RPM from this URL and install from it. All right. So now if I do a DNF repo list, I see a couple of extra repositories, right? The extra packages for Enterprise Linux 9 repository and the EPEL Cisco repository. And what really happened when I installed that RPM was we went into Etsy DNF, was it plugins? No, modules maybe. Oh, you know what? I can find this. RPM QL, EPEL 9. Did I misspell that? EPEL release latest 9. So I'm trying to find where it put its repository definitions. And what I'm trying to do is like interrogate that from the package itself. And I'm just misspelling what this is. How about DNF list installed? I can grep EPEL. Oh, because it's just called EPEL release. All right, so RPMQL EPEL release. All right, so it actually put its repository definitions down under Etsy yum repos.d. And repo. It basically put down things like this. So this is the start of a repository definition. Then you give it a name that's a human readable name. Anything that starts with a hash sign or a pound sign is a comment. Um, the meta link is a thing that allows us to like go to a place and choose off of a list a download mirror. This base URL is the more traditional way of managing your repos, where there's like a specific URL location where we should find packages. Metalink is used by some of the larger ones because they have a mirror list, and they will use Metalink to then go to the mirror list, get a specific mirror, and then that's the one that you're going to use for your package transaction. Um, Enabled, so this is turned on. I can get software from it. GPG check. So packages in this repository are signed with the GPG key, and we're going to verify that it's signed with the GPG key before we install it. And then down here, GPG key, here's where the GPG key is actually stored. So when I install my first piece of software from this repository, it's actually going to ask me to import this GPG key in order to install that software. All right, so if I do something like a DNF install moon buggy. Moonbuggy is a text. Really? Uh, DNF list available. Grab moon. I bet it's something like Moon Dash Buggy. There we go. DNF install Moon Buggy. Moon Buggy is a little text-based game that's like Moon Patrol. So you can see that it's going to download a couple of packages from extra packages for Enterprise Linux, including the Moon Buggy one. But then it also has it also has a couple of dependencies that it's going to serve out of some of my other repositories as well. And so if I'm happy with those, I'm going to go ahead and start the download. And then before it does the installation, it goes, hey, this is signed with the following GPG key. Is it okay that I import this into your GPG keyring for trusted software? I say yes. And then it goes ahead and installs the software because it complies with the GPG signature that's on the packages. All right, and now I can run Moon Buggy, right? And I can roll here, and we see my little uh, thing running. And oh, got to jump over the pit and the other pit and the other pit, right? And so there we go. And then it's smashed up, and there we are. All right, so that is ah, there we go. So that's a piece of software that we install from one of those third-party repositories. I like extra packages for Enterprise Linux for a couple of reasons. One, a lot of the developers that maintain packages there are Red Hatters. And secondly, they have a requirement that in order to have a package accepted by the extra packages for Enterprise Linux repository, sorry, I'm still getting over something from last week. In order to have a package accepted into the extra packages for Enterprise Linux repository, it cannot replace any packages provided by Red Hat for your provider or for your package. So that means that the packages that are in EPEL are a supplement to the packages that you already get from Red Hat for your RHEL packages. There are a couple other third-party package repos that I also sometimes use. For example, RPM Fusion. RPM Fusion has a ton of great graphical applications. They also have a whole bunch of intellectually encumbered codecs for video and other stuff that wouldn't be shipped as part of Red Hat or as part of a Red Hat maintained community repo like extra packages for enterprise Linux. So RPM Fusion ships these non-free, non-open source things that might also be useful to have. The word of caution with that is that RPM Fusion does not have as uh, rigorous a stance on replacing things that come with your distribution. So you could install something from RPM Fusion, and as part of that, upgrade a library on your machine that now in the future will break other upgrades that you need for packages because you have this advanced version of a library that something else relies on that can't be downgraded because the other thing you installed needs it, but also some other package on the system needs the older version of the library. And now you're kind of stuck in this weird dependency spot. So that's why I like extra packages for enterprise Linux. I don't get into those weird package dependencies because everything is a supplement to Red Hat Enterprise Linux. And so if you're coming from another distribution like Ubuntu, if you add on extra packages for enterprise Linux, that probably gets you the experience that you're used to when you think that we don't ship any software, we don't have to ship the software you need. Um, it's probably there. It's just in the community repo, whereas Ubuntu enables that community repo by default on every install, right? We actually make you kind of opt into it so you don't accidentally install community software and then start filing support cases about this stuff that's not supported and have a really poor experience. All right. And I see that Harbaugh says when I need to update the whole operating system, I use DNF upgrade dash Y dash refresh. And no confirmations are required. That's very true. Um, and if you are confident in everything in that transaction being accurate and exactly what you were desiring, then great. Um, I like to actually remove the -y and inspect my packages before I permit it to move forward and install them on my system. This probably also goes into another discussion about like whether one expects deferred or automatic updates. Personally, I am not a fan of automatic updates or enabling automatic updates, especially on my production systems, because an update will come through and then all of a sudden something goes haywire and you get to figure out what was applied to the system, not necessarily knowing that there was an update applied to the system. So by using the maintenance window schedule, where it's like, at this time, I will apply the updates to my system. Then I can inspect the transaction, I can apply the transaction, and then if something doesn't work after that transaction was applied, I know exactly what was applied to the system. And so I can use tools like DNF history to remove that transaction to try and get the machine back to a working state before the upgrade. Um, I just found that when I enable automatic upgrades, weird things happen. And now weird things are happening at like 2 o'clock in the morning or something silly when I don't want to be awake and dealing with weird things. So that's why I don't use -y when doing my package installations, and also why I don't enable automatic updates. All right. So we're at the end of our time together. If anybody has any questions, now is the time to ask them. If you're a deferred viewer, please feel free to leave a comment, and both Nate and I will review comments and provide responses. One other note while I'm waiting for any lagging questions. You may have noticed that several times throughout the episode, I said, yum, something, 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 yum, something, something. And that's a holdover from our previous package manager that came with RHEL called Yum. DNF is actually the iterated newer version of that package manager. So old habits die hard, and sometimes I still use Yum. But we also see things like when we installed the EPEL release, it used the etc yum repos.d directory for storing all of its repo definitions. And that's because that's where repo definitions go. So even though we're using the DNF tool, it's still using some of the directories and um, file names and stuff from when we used Yum as our package manager. We made the transition to DNF in, I want to say, Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8 and later. Um, Prior to that, you could use Yum, and you can still use Yum today. In fact, I could just do a Yum list, right? And it turns out that Yum is basically a symbolic link to DNF on later versions of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So if you have like scripts that you've ported from previous versions, or you just, like me, and old habits die hard. Sometimes you just type the wrong thing. It'll be fine. It'll still use DNF. All right, guys. Well, I don't see any other questions in the chat, so excellent. Um, Next week, Nate will be back, and we will be doing something. I don't remember what it was. Oh, uh, we have an idea for something new and different. So check out the advance or the scheduled show when we schedule it Monday or Tuesday next week to see if it's something that you'd be interested in. Um, our one of the guys that we work with on another team suggested this idea for a new style of show. So we're going to try it out next week. All right, but I don't want to give too much away because it's we're trying it for the first time. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in today. Hope you got something out of learning to use learning to use DNF, and installing and managing packages on your Red Hat Enterprise Linux machine. Until next time.